Good morning. Welcome to our second BMDCNV WAGinar, Lost Then Found Dogs. Our WAGinars are an ongoing series of Zoom talks on a variety of Berner topics. We are using Zoom for this series so our far-flung membership can do something together, even if it's virtually. The Neshoba Valley Board hopes that you find this to be a valuable addition to our offering. A couple of things about today's mechanics. We are recording this Zoom session so it can be viewed later. Our secretary, Julie Mott, is at the master controls, and she'll have everybody on mute. Thank you, Julie. We already do know what a barking burner sounds like. At the end, we'll take questions. If you have questions for any of our speakers today, please use the chat to send questions, and Allison Harding will be monitoring the chat and capturing the questions. Thank you, Allison, and then she'll relay them to the speakers at the end. Our WAGinar today is about a potentially difficult situation, but these all do have happy outcomes, so you don't need to be worried about staying on and listening if your heartstrings start to get tugged at. Some of today's speakers will be familiar faces to you. Mimi Englander, our webmaster, has been with our club for some 30 years and been our webmaster for some 20. Cindy Buhner is our new Berner-related editor. You may not know Darlene Hazel. She's a golden person, but she has a great story to tell. Please welcome Darlene as she starts us off with Nala's adventures.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm here to talk about what happened to our beautiful Nala on Christmas Day of 2021. Next slide, please. So just as sort of a background, on Christmas Day, we were entering a family member's home at 150 Air Road in Harvard for a Christmas gathering. And at approximately 5 p.m., Nala was spooked by another dog and bolted off into the night. Nala was 4 months old at the time and was wearing a collar, but she had no identification tags and really had very little familiarity with the property. Next slide, please. So what we did, it was obviously sheer panic right at that moment. We searched the property in immediate area by foot, cars, ATVs, and drones, and that lasted over several days. We posted the story to Next Door Neighbor and also to Facebook. We enlisted the help of our entire community. It was amazing how many volunteers, and when I say hundreds, I'm not exaggerating, literally hundreds of volunteers showed up to help us with the search, both on foot and by vehicles driving around town and surrounding towns. We reported her missing on Mass Dogs of Massachusetts. We lit grills, left articles of clothing, familiar scents outside in the area where she disappeared, in hopes of attracting her back. We contacted Channel 5 News and made a list of every animal control officer and veterinarian within a 25-mile radius and called them to alert them of her disappearance. We also created posters, both large posters and very small posters, and placed them in local businesses and on telephone poles and around all the surrounding towns to try to provide awareness that Nala was missing. And we really just kept communicating with anybody and everybody that we could talk to, so that everybody knew that this beautiful puppy was missing, and we just never gave up. Next slide, please. So the plea for help. When I contacted Channel 5 News, we were very, very fortunate that they responded. They told me that they could not necessarily do a story around a missing dog, but they were able to package it as sort of a lesson learned on how to keep dogs safe. And because it happened on Christmas Day, they were really amenable to running the story. So here's a clip from that it was on Monday, December 27th on the 5 o'clock news.
Golden retriever named Nala had just arrived at Grandma's house with her human family when this happened.
The puppy was like right beside us as we were walking in, and there was another dog there that frightened her. And so she ran back to go back under the truck, and between the sound of the vehicle and the other dog, she just bolted.
Yeah, Darlene Hazel says more than a dozen people jumped in to search using ATVs and even drones. But 2 days later, no sign of Nala. Well, Animal Goldston from the Animal Rescue League of Boston says accidents happen, so make sure your pet's collar has an ID tag and don't forget the microchip.
Microchips are super important. They are identification devices that are internal. So if you lose your pet and someone finds that animal and brings them to a shelter or a clinic or veterinarian, then we can scan them and get that ID number, and the owner's information is registered.
Look at that face. Darlene tells us Nala was scheduled to get her microchip at the vet this coming Friday. So for now, she's holding out hope.
Maybe somebody truly thought she was an abandoned puppy and, you know, took her home for their family. We just want her back. No questions asked.
Yeah, a last piece of advice here. If your pet goes missing, report it to animal control in your area. I hope they find her.
Yes, we sure hope Nala finds her way home.
Next slide, please. So a miracle really happened. So I call this the reunion. So Nala was found on the property from
A
which
smile up front is something you'll
around
find at
2:45 on
most good
December
banks.
27th.
But at Brookline Bank,
PL5
we know
ended up running a follow-up story, and here's that follow-up story.
Puppy has been found. We
Yes.
first told you yesterday a Harvard family was heartbroken after their 4-month-old golden retriever just disappeared Christmas night. She ran away after being spooked by another dog. Well, Nala is now home. Look at this reunion, and as you can see, the Hazel family is just so happy about it. They credit the many people who got involved in the search on foot and on social media. It looks like Nala is so happy to be home too. Look at the tail wagging there.
Yes, oh, love the happy ending on that one
absolutely.
for sure.
Next slide, please. And it truly was a Christmas miracle. We were just so thrilled to have her back. The Boston Globe ended up doing a photo shoot. They came out and did a photo shoot and ended up doing a follow-up story as well. Next slide, please. So where is Nala today? Nala is just the most amazing, happy 1-year-old puppy. She turned 1 on September 6th. Had a great celebration with family and friends. Today she is chipped. She wears an Apple AirTag and it has full identification. Not letting her out of my sight ever again. And we truly are so thankful, you know, to our local community and to Channel 5 News for helping to bring Nala home. You know, I really believe it was the efforts of the community, social media, that really helped us get her back, and we are forever grateful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy Buhner, and I'm going to embark with you upon a journey to find my dog who went on a 7-day journey from my house. Next slide, please. So Turkey, a little background information. We were getting a puppy as well as Turkey from Amy Kessler in Kansas. Turkey was too big to fly, so my husband drove out and drove him back. He was a 2-year-old recently neutered male, and so which means he was new to us and new to this area. This is a picture of the day he got here, which was on September 12th. And 11 days later, I went to a meeting, and I have cats, so I keep my windows really closed because I don't want them sitting in the sills and popping screens out. But apparently that was just enough for Turkey to be able to nudge the window open, pop the screen out, and jump out the family room window and go on his jaunt. Next slide, please. So we did a lot of things. As I said, first thing I did was panicked, called my husband and ran all over my neighborhood with no results in finding my dog, unfortunately. I called the rescue chair, Anya Wittenberg, who had an awesome amount of energy behind her to, one, calm me down and help me think intelligently about what I was going to do. And then we started the process of calling all sorts of people that might find them, the police, dog officers, veterinarians, everybody else. There was a service online, and I can't remember who told me about it, called findtoto.com, which actually made phone calls to an area you designated, and it would tell people what had happened and also give them a phone number to call. And that actually turned out to be very, very helpful because it gave us some good ideas as to where Turkey was going. We also created this flyer, which I tried to put as much good information in there as I could. Probably could have modified it some in trying to keep the pertinent stuff, but we put it everywhere. We walked neighborhoods, we handed them out door to door. We just kind of plastered every area we could find with this poster. I think it actually was very helpful. Next slide, please. More things that we did. This was not in the time of social media because it was, or not a lot of it, it was 2010. And we had basically Craigslist and Facebook, and we posted stuff there. We did a lot of emailing. I emailed to friends, had them email to more friends, lots of stuff like that. The Find Toto stuff worked a lot because we got a lot of information back. And it was really helpful to be able to kind of see where he was going. And I have a map that'll kind of show you what that looked like. Turkey's breeder, Amy, came out from Kansas. She brought the puppy we were going to be getting with her. She came out to help as well, which was wonderful. She actually did see him at one point, but I think he was so confused he didn't even go over to her, which really surprised all of us, but it was also from a fairly large distance. We got an airtime on a radio station that I didn't even realize we had gotten. But the biggest thing was all the tracking we did. We had so many people out there who were looking for him, so many BMs, members from this organization, which was a blessing for me. And I think really, really helped. But everybody just came out. It was a long time. 7 days is a very long time. Next slide, please. So this is kind of where Turkey went. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner, that's where I live in Harvard. It's not exactly probably his trail, but a lot of these, the arrows show you the sightings that we heard from findtoto.com. So those, in plugging those in, you can kind of see where he ended up going. The last point we found him at was unfortunately near 495 Route 2 and the train. And there was a big field that a friend of mine who was out searching saw him, and then we didn't see him again there, but he ended up right across from that through the woods where the Found in Littleton is, and that there's a farm there. And at that farm, they had a dog, they had a bunch of animals, and they had seen him, so they started putting out some food for him, which we think is what kept him in that area. Next slide, please. So since we figured out where he was, which was that farm, Mimi, I think, had been away for the weekend, and she saw all this stuff coming up about Turkey, and she offered her services and her dog Ivy, who apparently was very good at attracting dogs who were very nervous, scared, or confused. They hung out for 3 days, walking this area. It's a dead-end street. It dead-ended at Route 2. So it was a very short area, but there's a big set of woods behind it. And I think that's probably where he was hanging out. And he showed up a couple of times and kind of looked and then kind of left, which was very frustrating. Anya had a friend in Cambridge, I believe, who had a big have-a-heart trap. Now, Turkey was 104 pounds. He was a big boy. So we set up the trap, put lots of food in it. And one of the people on that road said, please just use our front yard. We have no problems with that. So we put food in there and we checked it. We ran shifts because you can't leave him stuck in a have-a-heart trap for a long time. He triggered it or it got triggered. We don't know if it was him the first night, but we figure when the have-a-heart trap came down, he is a big boy and it probably hit him in the bum and he backed up and was not successful in trapping him. So the second night, one of the neighbors down the street was actually going to help with this. They were helping doing the shifts. She called me and said she was sick and she couldn't do it. So I said, don't worry, I'll go out. So I went out, I'm driving up the road, and I know it says here he walked up to me and I was checking the trap and he put his nose in my hand. And yes, that's true. But there's a little more to it than that. I drive up the road. I see him going up the road in front of me. So I call Mimi on the phone. I said, Mimi, he's here. She says, be careful, because we were concerned that if he, saw someone, he was going to spook. So she said, why don't you check and see if the trap's been triggered? So I park the car. I get out of the car with my flashlight. I walk over to the trap, and the trap's not been triggered, but I'm looking at it. And I had this really weird feeling. And this is dark. This is September and it's dark. And I kind of look straight up ahead of me, and Turkey's standing there, and he's looking at me. He's probably 50 feet away from me. And I knew, I'm not supposed to try to approach him. I'm supposed to stand there and just wait and see what happens. So all I did was I put my hand down and I said, hello. And he did. He literally, I'm going to get choked up, came walking over and sorry, put his nose in my hand, basically looked at me and said, let's go home, which is what we did. Whew, sorry, this brought up a lot of emotion. And this was a day or two later, where we have the puppy and we have Turkey and all of us together. And it was a really tough time. And I have to say, going back and looking at all this stuff, all the emails and whatnot, I realized how hard this was and how grateful I was and still am for all the people who came out and all the people who helped so much trying to find this big guy that I didn't even know that well, but I knew we had a connection. Next slide, please. So we did learn a lot of lessons from that. And I think it's something that everybody needs to be aware of. You really want to make sure you have your dog identified. You want to actually check all potential escape routes, no matter what, no matter where you are, even in your own home. Anything is possible, especially with a dog that you're rehoming, or even a dog that you know very, very well. Anything is a challenge. Contact whoever, whatever, spread your net so wide so that everybody has an opportunity to help you with that. And you have the best possible opportunity of getting your dog back. And as Darlene said, there are so many more options available than there were when my dog got lost. It's amazing what you can do these days. And yeah, you're going to panic initially, but you got to calm down. You got to stay strong. I had 3 little boys. They were 10, 10, and 12. And they were troopers. They came out, they did searching with us and everything. But, I had to be strong for them so that they would feel that, it would be possible to get Turkey back and that we would be one big happy family again. And patience and persistence, boy, do they pay off. They really do. So thank you, everybody, for all your help.
So, hi, I'm Mimi. I can't promise I won't cry because I'm crying already listening to Cindy recount that story. I think especially for Cindy and me, it was so long ago, our dogs the dogs were talking about getting lost, that it just brings back so much of the experience. But, as the case with Darlene, we had a really happy ending. Darlene and Cindy, we had a happy ending. So that's the good news. So I am going to talk about a dog named Johan. And he came to live with a family in Westford, Mass. In February 2008. He was 18 months old at the time. He was an intact male. He had never lived in a house before. I won't get into the details about that, but he was not socialized with people, only with other Berners. And the very first Sunday he came to live with that family, the family had a big Super Bowl party. The Pats were in the Super Bowl, because when aren't they in the Super Bowl? Hopefully this year they'll defy the odds, but they had a really loud party. And I imagine it really freaked him out because he wasn't used to that kind of noise. And at one point, one of the kids in the family opened the front door, and he saw that as his time to get away from all the hubbub. So off he went into the night. And at the time we had the BMDCNV Yahoo group, and a message was posted about there being this burner loose. And I happen to live about 1.5 miles away, so I knew I had to try to help find him. And like Turkey, Johan had an area he was roaming, and there were sightings along the way. As with Turkey, he tended to gravitate toward rural areas, and the box label number 1 is where he ran away from, and you can see 495 is right here. And number 2 is where he had been seen sitting on 495. Imagine this, you're driving down the highway and you see a Bernese Mountain Dog or any dog sitting in the breakdown lane. It must have been quite the sight, and very alarming. And so people were reporting multiple sightings of him on the highway. And number 3 is where he was ultimately found. It was a farm in a very wooded area. So I went on 495, and I found that there was a chain link fence going along the highway, between the woods and the highway. Someone had cut the fence, and there was snow on the ground, so we could see Johan's paw prints in the snow. So that gave us some clues that he had definitely come and gone that way to access the highway. So Anya, rescuer extraordinaire, and I went in where the fence had been torn. We shored up the fence with some makeshift things. I think an umbrella was one of them, and some other things to make sure he couldn't get back to the highway. We had to hope we were trapping him inside the fence and not out, but he was definitely inside the fence. And we spent the day just in the mucky ice, following paw prints, dog paw prints, but never saw him. I think we had a feeling he was watching us, but he didn't make his presence known at that time. So about 6 days after he had taken off, there was a sighting of him at a farm, which I had shown on the map. So here he'd been seen on the highway. This is all wooded and conservation area. And this is where he had been found on the farm. And I believe the homeowner of the farm had put some cat food out or something. And so he was ravenous after 6 days of, who knows, very little eating or maybe no eating. And so he was hanging out at this farm. So I got a call from the owner, Johan's owner, to see if I could come over and help. And I put Ivy in the car, and she, as soon as I got to the farm, I let her out of the car. And when she jumped out of the car, Johan came barreling out of the woods over to her. And I can imagine it's, you see all these unfamiliar foreign strangers that you're not particularly fond of anyway. And then you see a Bernese Mountain Dog, your own kind. And so he just was so happy to see her. The problem was he wouldn't let any humans near him, including the woman who owned him, for a few days leading up to this. So it just became pretty clear that people were not his thing, and that was not going to help. And so because he was so attached to Ivy and would go wherever she went, we decided it'd be best if everybody left the farm. And the owner was fine with that. She had just started a new job, and she was under a lot of pressure to go to her job. And anyway, so over the course of the day, the farm is down a very long dirt road, and you could just walk around for hours on the trails and the farm, the meadows and things like that. So Ivy would run around and play and be all bouncy, and he would be the same with her. But anytime I tried to approach him, he just would not have any part of me. And the other thing was, over the course of the day, he could hear people yelling his name, people from the club and neighbors who were searching for him, and that freaked him out. And so we made the hard decision to get the word out to the searchers that they needed to leave the area, because that was making him really nervous. So at that point, it was very clear that this could take a while, but I just I don't know, I figured I couldn't take Ivy home, obviously, because who knows what would happen to Johan, but I couldn't leave her there. I'm sure the two of them wouldn't have minded that, but I just knew I had to stay. And I figured as long as Ivy's there, he's going to be there. I've since learned so much about feral dog behavior, and he was exhibiting all the signs. And like Turkey, I think the longer you're on the run, the more you develop those tendencies. And you know, he already wasn't socialized, and so it was quite the challenge. So I just decided I wasn't going to leave until I got him. And my husband packed me a backpack with a sleeping bag and some food, and the homeowner was gracious enough to let Ivy and I sleep in the barn. So that's what we did. We slept in the barn. I left the door open to the barn, and Johan stayed at the door to the barn, but never would cross the threshold. That was too scary for him. And he howled all night long. And I have since looked up different meanings of howling. And I think his howling in that moment was to communicate with us, to make contact with us. And that was soothing to him, I think. So he did that all night long. As you can imagine, not a lot of sleep was had. Ivy slept well, but I didn't. And then the next day we started it all over again. And I think people who are aware of the situation were getting impatient, saying, what's going on? Somebody needs to do something more. And, you know, I think by midday, he was just exhausted after 6 days of, you know, just who knows how many miles he covered over that time. But I finally found an opportunity to get him. I got him in my car, and I called the owner, and she said, you know, I just don't think this dog's going to work out for me. And I had felt so bonded to him at that point. And I said, well, okay, you know, do you want me to keep him? And she said, I would love that. And so I brought him home, and over the course of the 28 hours we were together on the farm, I kept calling him Puppy because he wasn't reacting well to Johan. And he, you know, I would say puppy, 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 but I was so cold at that and tired that I think it started to sound like Bobby, Bobby, Bobby. And so that's how Johan became Bobby. So these are just quickly some pictures. You can see this is one of the first days. When I first got him home, he was loose in my fenced in yard, and I couldn't get him back in the house. And I called Anya in a panic. I was crying, and I said, Anya, this dog, I can't get him in my house. And she said, well, is it the worst thing in the world if he lives in a fenced in backyard with food and he's safe? And I said, no, I guess not. But eventually we were able to trick him, and I got him in the house and got that long line on him, a 50-foot long line that you can see in the pictures. And that enabled me to bring him in at night. And at first he was just still glued to Ivy's side. You can see here, I think it was probably within the same week, he's still with her. He integrated into my pack so well. Luckily, he was really great with other dogs. And I also found out he loved kids. And I think he loved kids because he wasn't threatened by them. So that was nice. I could have some friends, kids over, and he seemed to like that. This picture with my husband is probably about 6 or 8 months later on a hike, and you can start to see how he looks just like any other pet dog. And here he is swimming in the lower right. He loved to swim. I think he felt safe in the water because people didn't tend to go in the water, especially in December. So that was one of his safe places. And in the upper left, this is up in Maine, where we try to spend a week every summer, and he just loved it there. Here he is howling. He howled throughout his life. We ended up being able to have him until he was about 11, and he howled all the time, just happy howl, I guess. And we have some great videos of it too, so it's nice to watch them every now and then. And you know, just love beach time. And in the lower left, this is Oceanwood in Maine, where the Bernese Mountain Dog Club of Neshoba Valley used to have a retreat every November. And he loved that because it was mostly Berners, so it was his peeps. And here he is with Trinity Bates, Linda and Nancy Bates' girl, who She had a lot of paramours and has had a lot of paramours, and Bobby was one of many, but Bobby didn't know that, I don't think. I think he thought they were exclusive. And eventually I was able to teach him tricks even, which was really remarkable. And then, here he is, probably not long before he passed away at 11, just, you can see he looks like a normal dog. And with our family, he did become a normal dog, but he still never trusted strangers. He wouldn't let anyone come up to him, even after many years later. So a lot of these lessons I learned were lessons that Darlene and Cindy have already shared. And, the most important thing is act immediately. This was before social media, and we didn't have a lot of options. There were, we did the owner had done the standard things like put the flyer up and things like that. But the first thing I would say, in any type of new dog coming into your home situation, you have to be very vigilant. And the tracking tags that exist these days are wonderful. Like Darlene uses the air tag, and that's a very affordable way to keep track of your dog, because it's a free app. There's no monthly fee like some of the GPS locators have, but there's a lot of options for that, and the microchip. And then just really make sure your home is safe and that all family members understand what it takes to keep your dog safe and in the house. And like, we always had a double door, so if one door opened, there was always another door to keep them safe. As far as in a lost dog situation, accuracy and information is really important, especially about the dog's personality. Every dog's going to be unique, right? So some may run up to people, but a lot of these dogs, especially the longer they're on the run, will not do that. And it's really important for that information to be communicated while the search is going on. I love the idea of lighting the grills where the dog was lost. Like, the smell of food can be so compelling, especially, after a day or two when they start to get really hungry. Having a central staging area is very helpful, and designating point people to be the communicators and the receivers of information is essential. And determining what resources are needed. And we're going to go through some of those on the next slide. Having all the tools ready at your disposal, even if, hopefully you never need this, but if you have all of these things to pick from and to use in your unique situation to help find your dog, it's going to really put you ahead of the game. And then, Cindy's last bullet, patience and persistence, bears repeating, because in Bobby's case, especially, and Turkey's as well, that was essential because it went on for days. And sometimes it goes on for months. You hear about these dogs quite often who are lost for a long time, but they eventually find their way home one way or another. So on the BMDCNV website, we've developed a very comprehensive list of resources. This is right from the homepage. You can access lost dog resources, and we're updating them all the time, especially to bring in new technology and things like that, and new websites and Facebook pages to get the word out. So for example, drones didn't exist in terms of like everybody being able to have one back, many years ago. And so today the drone could be a great tool. You just never know. But anyway, this is a great page. I suggest you at least become familiar with it. And like I said, hopefully you'll never need it. And then at the bottom, there's a lost dog toolkit of resources, and then a lot of websites and Facebook pages. And, these are by state in some cases. And there's one that's more general that Cindy employed, the findtoto.com. So that can be a great resource. So basically, it's always good to familiarize yourself with something with the hope that it never happens. The day after Bobby was found, a Bernese Mountain Dog person, Pastor Martha Hoverson, had delivered a sermon in her congregation, and she incorporated Bobby's story into her sermon. And this was an excerpt from her sermon about the importance of patience and persistence. And that wraps up my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you all. This has just been so interesting and informative and emotional. I'd like to ask Allison if any questions have come in from people today.
Nope, there are no questions.
Oh.
I did post the Lost Dog Resources link in the chat.
Okay, well, we have lots of questions at this end. What is it about 495? I mean, this is 3 for 3 of these dogs being lost and hanging out near 495. I mean, I realize people drive past and might spot a Bernese Mountain Dog from a car, but it just seems so unusual that a dog would be attracted to a highway. Mimi,
Good
you said
question.
you've done a fair amount of research on the feral dog behavior and other dog behavior. Do you have any thoughts on this, or anybody else?
Honestly, I think in these situations, it was coincidence because the homeowner for Johan literally lived right next to 495. So I think that was a case of coincidence. And it just so happened that fence was ripped. And if that hadn't been the case, he wouldn't have been on the highway, obviously. But so in this situation, I do think it was coincidence. I don't know if Darlene or Cindy have other thoughts about that.
I think also with Turkey, it was probably all coincidence, although he managed to visit 495 Route 2 and the train. And the worst calls I had to make was when I had to call the MBTA and the state police to see if he had been found either on the train tracks or either of the highways. You know, I wanted to cover all my bases, but boy, did I not want to have a positive answer to that. And luckily I didn't get one.
Yeah, as far as Nala goes, the property where she disappeared from was right near Route 2. So it was primarily the location. We never got confirmation that she was ever seen on 495 or on Route 2. So
Good.
I had a comment about Nala because we were involved in that case. The fact that the owner put 2 big signs at the intersection of Route 2 Rotary going into Westford and 110. Thousands of people drove by and saw those signs, and they were like, you know, campaign signs, big
Sandwich
folded
board.
sandwich
Yeah.
board type signs.
yeah, sandwich board signs. Yes.
And it just, you know, got that dogs on everybody's mind. You know, what a great way to reach. It's great to send out to the community, but of course it always helps to have a picture of a cute golden puppy. But man, I can only think that 10,000 people a day saw those signs and went home, and that combined with television and everything else, what a good job of getting the word out.
What a
Thank you.
blanket you guys created. It
Thank
was
you
just
so much.
astonishing. I mean, we were driving along 110 and every other phone pole had her picture on it.
Yeah. It was a process to take them down, but we were so happy to take them down.
Oh, that's a good thing to be
Yes,
doing.
it was.
isn't it?
I was smiling, taking those down. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that strikes me as being in common with all of these situations, and for different reasons, but the thing that seemed to trigger the lost situation was some kind of spooking events. With Nala, it was the truck or the door, or the holidays or whatever. Cindy, what was it that eventually he forced his way out the window, so he didn't really spook, but
with him, it wasn't really a spooking event. I think, you know, in looking back on it, we had gone for a walk in the morning, which we normally did, out through our back. We abut Delaney, so we go back through there. And then I had to go to a meeting with some school people. So I think with him, it was like, well, where the heck have you gone? And if I go out that way, which is the way he went, I might find you because that's where we just walked. I don't know. There was no specific spooking, unless it's possible, you know, I have a couple cats in here. Who knows what they did? They could have had a party.
oh, and Mimi, you told us a very clear example of that, of this, the party and the Super Bowl party and the noise and all of this. It's something for people to be aware of. What is your dog's history, especially with an adult dog. With a puppy, you have a little more wiggle room, I think, but with an adult dog, they've built some history. If they've been a kennel dog, if they've been in other situations where maybe people weren't nice to them, or even if you don't know whether people were nice to them, what are they going to think in a novel situation? It's just challenging all around, isn't it? And you have to, you know, as soon as you take on this new dog, you have to get inside their head and figure out what they like, don't like, might be afraid of, and you don't have much of a chance to do that. But it's something that is so tricky. When we used to do rescue, rescue dogs would come here to our house, and I remember thinking that the first day was usually fine. They were just glad to be rescued. The second day, there was some novelty. What's in the house? Who are the other dogs? What's going on here? The third day was when I really tried to watch them, because that was when the wheels seemed to start turning and they started to want to go look for their home.
And they thought it was going to be, you know, 500 yards down the road or something. They didn't realize they came down from Vermont or New Hampshire or whatever. Right. And man, we watched them like a hawk. Yeah. How many were these cases involving rescue dogs? I know Nala wasn't, but were any of them rescues? No. Huh.
Not in the traditional sense.
Right. I mean, they sort of turned into that, but
Yeah.
Bobby sort of turned into the classic on that one. But other things can be triggering events. We had a dog he wasn't going to leave us, but we didn't have fencing at the time, and he bloated. He was really ill one night, and we didn't know much about anything. You know, we were in our really stupid stage, and he went off to seek someplace to hide. And so it took us a long time outside in the dark to find him, and he was just cowering with his tummy swelling up and in a lot of pain. So it doesn't have to be an oddball situation, you know, the situations like we've kind of heard already, but there are other things that can spook a dog, and sometimes they will go off and, you know, just seek a hiding place.
Yeah. He survived.
He was fine.
Good.
The other thing is visitors. I know, Mimi, you mentioned this with Turkey's story. Darlene, it's kind of in your situation as well. And I know a very sad story of 5 incredibly well-trained Goldens whose one Thanksgiving got let out the front door by accident, and not a lot of them survived. And you know, so when there are visitors at your house, if you have to post rules at the door, you might want to consider doing that, just so people know. Or as you were saying, was it Mimi or Cindy, with the double doors, always kind of having an airlock at the door, so that that's a possibility. And also, one friend of ours had Dutch doors so that the bottom stayed closed and the top could be open. And that way it was just another level of protection. Anya, I believe you've been able to join our WAGinar a little into it, and so you missed some of the nice things that people were saying about you earlier, but clearly you've been a very big factor in 2 and probably a lot more lost and found dog stories. So thank you to Anya, and it just reinforces, I think, that reaching out to the club has a lot of resources in terms of our people who've been through these situations, people who can be calmer than you are at the moment, because panic is a huge factor in all of this, and it does help to have other clear heads helping you. So Anya, thank you from all of us for an awful lot of wisdom in these situations.
Yes. There is one question, and I think Anya could help with this.
Great.
If she's able to get her mic working, I don't know. But it says, from your experiences, what should you not do when looking for a lost dog?
No.
I think for me, from one of the things that Mimi said to me, which I feel was really, really important, was to not approach, but let them approach you if you do get in a situation where you're near them. I think that was, I didn't go near Turkey when he was standing there. So it was his decision. And I think, you know, when you have people who are out looking, the same thing applies. You know, if you go towards them, it's like anytime you go towards a dog, sometimes they think it's a game, so they're going to run the opposite direction. It's better if you're the one running in the opposite direction, hoping they're chasing you.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think depending on the given dog, you just have to be really careful about what they're willing to deal with in terms of your behavior. That's why it's really important to educate all the searchers so that they are all consistent in what they're doing. Because in some of these cases, it's really best to just be eyes. You know, if you see a sighting, the sightings were so invaluable in all the cases. So, you know, just be a pair of eyes. You're not necessarily going to be the one to be able to get them. And in some cases, you know, it could be have a heart trap or something like that. You know, these days they have these humongous pens they can put up so that dogs like a Bobby, who never would have gone in a turkey size have a heart trap, might have gone into, I'm not sure. But just as long as everybody's on the same page in terms of what to do if the dog is seen is really important.
Great. Any closing comments from anybody?
I hope nobody has to go through this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think it's kind of like insurance, be as prepared as possible in the hope that it never happens.
Never happens. It's like good project management, right? Plan for the worst.
It does. Call Darlene. She knows everything to do.
I got you. She's on our list from now on. When I was hearing about night
got
vision,
lucky. We got so lucky. I mean, really. I mean, it was perseverance, but then it was just the timing and, you know, I think it was tremendous that Channel 5 aired that story. And it was just, the stars were aligned for us. I mean, really and truly. And just hundreds of volunteers and the support of the community. And we were just very, very fortunate that it had a happy ending.
we are so glad. Well, Darlene, Cindy, and Mimi, thank you very, very much for this wonderful session. Very helpful and informative. Thank you for pointing us to the lost dog resources at bmdcnv.org. Those are always going to be useful if you need to get to something right away. I mentioned earlier we would be recording this session. We have recorded throughout, and we will be making the information about where the recording is posted available, details to follow on that. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning, and thanks so much to our speakers today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.